spokesperson for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle saying the couple is being kicked out of their Windsor home. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been requested to vacate their residence.
For a long time, public discussion around Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has moved in cycles: brief controversy, intense reaction, and then silence. Yet when individual moments are viewed together rather than in isolation, a quieter, more structured story begins to emerge. Not one of scandal or open conflict, but of gradual repositioning inside one of the most protocol-driven institutions in the world. Officially, nothing dramatic ever happened. There were no press releases announcing exclusion, no statements confirming tension, no acknowledgments of internal disagreement. Buckingham Palace remained characteristically silent. And yet, over time, a series of moments, each easily explained on its own, began forming a pattern that became increasingly difficult to ignore. In royal systems, meaning is rarely communicated through confrontation. It is communicated through placement, access, and visibility. The first signal many observers point to came during King Charles III's coronation. Meghan Markle was not present. There was no public fallout, no last-minute cancellation, no formal explanation beyond references to family considerations. Prince Harry attended alone. In royal terms, absence carries weight. Coronations are not informal events. Invitations are deliberate. Seating plans are finalized months in advance. Every inclusion and exclusion reflects institutional choices rather than personal preference. When someone does not appear at such a moment, it invites questions that are never directly answered. That was the decision: mutual, strategic, quietly enforced. The palace offered no clarification, and none was expected. The monarchy rarely explains what it chooses not to show. That absence did not stand alone. Months earlier, during Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, global attention focused on unity and solemnity. Yet viewers quickly noticed visual distinctions. Meghan Markle was seated in the second row, separated from senior working royals. Protocol provided an explanation: working and non-working royals are seated differently, but protocol does not control public perception. And perception mattered. In moments of shared grief, distance appears intentional, even when it is procedural. Cameras lingered. Analysts dissected angles. The images spread widely, not because they were dramatic, but because they were precise. Following the funeral, a private reception was held for world leaders and senior royals. Meghan was not in attendance. Again, the explanation was straightforward: access tiers within the royal structure. Still, repetition matters. Once is coincidence, twice is procedure. Over time, procedure begins to resemble policy. Nowhere is royal hierarchy more visible than on the Buckingham Palace balcony. For generations, the balcony has served as the monarchy's visual statement to the world. It is not merely ceremonial, it defines who represents the institution publicly. Early in her royal life, Meghan appeared there prominently. Later, that changed. A revised policy restricted balcony appearances to working royals only. Clean, defensible, administrative, yet also decisive. Removal from the balcony is not a punishment. It is a recalibration of role. Once removed, a figure remains family but exits the institutional frame. That recalibration became unmistakable during the Platinum Jubilee. The event was designed to project continuity and stability. 70 years of reign. Carefully choreographed down to the smallest detail. Meghan and Harry were present, but visually repositioned. No balcony appearance. Second row seating, minimal interaction with senior royals. There were no visible confrontations, no awkward exchanges, just polite distance. And in royal culture, polite distance is final. Hostility invites negotiation. Distance closes the door quietly. The message was structural, not emotional. Shortly after, the shift became physical. Following their decision to step down as working royals, Prince Harry and Meghan were asked to vacate Frogmore Cottage. Officially, the reasoning was simple: royal residences are reserved for those actively serving the institution. The explanation was reasonable, even expected. But Frogmore was more than a home. It was a permanent foothold inside Windsor Estate, a symbol of proximity, a form of access that allowed informal presence near senior royals. Once that access was removed, everything changed. Returns required permission. Visits became scheduled. Informal encounters disappeared. Inside royal systems, closeness equals relevance. Distance dissolves it. This was not framed as punishment. It was architecture, a redefinition of who exists inside the system and who visits it. And once architecture changes, influence fades without argument. Reports from palace events began reflecting this shift. On at least one occasion, Meghan and Harry were quietly redirected from a space reserved for senior working royals. There was no confrontation, no embarrassment, just a gentle correction. To outsiders, this seems trivial. Inside institutional systems, it is definitive. The monarchy does not explain adjustments, it enforces them. Timing, too, became revealing. At private gatherings, interactions reportedly grew brief, polite, correct, but short. Invitations were extended, but evenings ended early. In royal social culture, duration matters. Staying signals, comfort. Lingering signals, acceptance. Early departure signals, closure. Over time, the pattern repeated. This was not rejection, it was reduction. Even Queen Elizabeth II herself reportedly began stepping back quietly. No confrontation, no emotional language, just fewer meetings, less access, formal communication replacing warmth. The Queen's authority was never expressed loudly, but her withdrawal reshaped everything. Without proximity to the monarch, advocacy disappears. Influence fades, decisions harden. By the time the public noticed, the shift was already complete. Looking further back, some observers point to an earlier signal during an overseas royal tour. During an official visit, Prince Harry stepped forward for a ceremonial inspection. Meghan followed instinctively. A palisade gently redirected her back. No drama. No embarrassment. Just correction. Royal tours are choreographed precisely. Every role is assigned. This moment demonstrated hierarchy in motion. Harry held the role. Meghan did not. The system corrected itself instantly. It was not a rebuke. It was instruction. And systems remember first corrections. From that moment onward, similar adjustments followed, smaller, quieter, consistent, each reinforcing the same boundary. Order matters. Position matters. Outside palace walls, royal status operates differently. At a reported private dining experience, a suggestion of special accommodation tied to royal association was declined. No exception, no rearrangement, no deference. Inside royal systems, hierarchy is enforced. Outside them, it must be earned. This distinction mattered. Once Meghan and Harry stepped beyond institutional structure, titles no longer carried automatic authority. Doors did not open by default. Influence became contextual rather than assumed. Viewed individually, each moment has an explanation. Together, they form a trajectory, not expulsion. Repositioning. The monarchy does not push people out dramatically. It narrows the frame. Visibility shrinks. Access reduces. Boundaries harden. Everything remains polite. Everything remains correct. And that is how institutional power operates consistently, without explanation. By the time narratives surface publicly, the decisions have already been absorbed into the system. There is nothing left to debate. What remains is observation, because repetition inside the royal family is never accidental. It is the system speaking clearly without ever raising its voice. And when that system adjusts its frame, the story continues, but on different terms. Not led by those at the center, but interpreted by those watching from a distance. That is where this story now sits. Not at the edge of scandal, but at the conclusion of a process that has been unfolding for years, measured, silent, and unmistakable. What makes this repositioning especially significant is that it did not rely on public confrontation or dramatic statements. In fact, the absence of drama is what gives it credibility. Institutions that are uncertain react loudly. Institutions that are confident adjust quietly. The royal family has operated for centuries on this principle. When a role no longer fits, the institution does not debate it in public. It narrows access, redefines presence, and allows time to do the rest. Over months and years, visibility changes. Familiar images stop appearing. Invitations become selective. The public adjusts without being told to. This is why attempts to reframe the narrative externally often struggle. Once an institution has completed its internal recalibration, no amount of explanation can reverse it. Statements may circulate, interviews may clarify intent, but structure always outweighs commentary. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, this has created a unique paradox. Their public profile remains high, yet their institutional proximity is minimal. They are visible without being central, discussed without being directive, watched without being followed. In media terms, that shift matters. Influence depends not just on recognition, but on placement within a system. Outside the palace framework, attention becomes transactional. Engagement must be earned repeatedly rather than assumed. And that is where the final transformation occurs. Royal status, once defined by lineage and proximity, becomes subject to the same dynamics as any other public figure. Metrics replace tradition. Reaction replaces deference. Relevance must be renewed. None of this requires blame or accusation. It is simply the outcome of separation from an institution that does not share authority loosely. Once distance is established, it remains in place not through enforcement, but through habit. The story, then, is no longer about what was lost, but about what comes next. Whether influence can exist independently of structure, whether visibility can substitute for position, and whether public attention, once detached from institutional power, can sustain itself long-term. Those questions remain open, but the process that raised them is already complete, and in systems built on continuity, completion